Act does just what it says. It returns jobs to the American people. Its premise is simple. If the federal government won't do its job, it should get out of the way for states and those who will. Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this point, I yield to my good colleague from Alabama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to congratulate the gentleman from Alabama, my colleague in the 5th Congressional District, for organizing this tonight. And we are all here tonight to discuss what America is facing, and that's a self-imposed security crisis. The main concern is that it appears that the administration is ignoring its responsibility to enforce our nation's immigration laws. For our security, economic well-being, and safety, immigration enforcement does matter. Since the beginning of the current administration, we have seen decisions and policies that have denigrated immigration enforcement. It started with the identification of priorities, where the Department of Homeland Security announced it would force largely on removing only those aliens convicted of serious crimes. Most recently, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE as it is referred to, issued guidance directing broad use in the prosecutorial discretion. Let me explain how that would work, or how that does work. ICE agents locate a fugitive who has been ordered to be removed. The fugitive is arrested in his apartment where 4 other people are present. ICE agents ascertain that all these individuals are illegal aliens, though they do not have an actual criminal conviction. Pursuant to ICE priorities, these individuals would not be arrested. This process on whether to prosecute or not was intended to be exercised on a case-by-case basis, not by frontline officers directed to ignore the law, but by supervisors and attorneys looking at the law and the facts of a particular case and considering humanitarian concerns or national security interest. Now, frontline agents and officers in the middle of an encounter are being asked to essentially conduct an on-the-spot investigation. Under the administration's policy, frontline officers and agents don't have much of a choice but to ignore the law and leave the illegal alien behind, unless the alien is a fugitive or has an actual criminal conviction. Not only do we have memos directing frontline officers to ignore illegal aliens under the current administration, but we have committees second-guessing decisions officers, attorneys, and judges make. The Department of Homeland Security set up a task force of outsiders to tell the Secretary whether this policy should include ignoring illegal aliens encountered at traffic stops or those who would have drunk driving violations. The Department is also establishing a committee to review all 400,000 immigration proceedings, including for aliens with final removal orders, to decide whether these illegal aliens should actually be removed. This is the problem, and it leads to cases like the one that my colleague from Alabama just talked about, Tad Mattel. The new policy, in effect, refuses to enforce immigration law until, and let me stress that, until a serious, perhaps violent crime has been committed. If immigration law had been enforced, Tad's life may have been spared. Today, more than ever, our nation's fiscal resources are constrained. Despite that fact, this body has made immigration enforcement and Homeland Security a priority. Congress, under both Republican and Democrat leadership, has consistently provided ICE with funds above those funds they have requested, and that's to ensure a strong enforcement and security. Funds the Department of Homeland Security received at the hand of this chamber should not be used to blatantly ignore the law or for the implementation of flawed and reckless policies that provide backdoor amnesty. These memos and committees may allow millions of illegal immigrants to remain in the United States in violation of existing law and regulation and compete with unemployed Americans and legal immigrants working for scarce jobs. While the federal government seems to find loopholes to keep illegal aliens who pose public safety threats in this country, states like my home state of Alabama, are being prosecuted for attempting to take this problem in their own hands. Alabama and other states burdened with these issues shouldn't have to worry about federal intervention. Alabama was the 5th state in this country to adopt laws addressing illegal immigration. The legislature of Alabama and the governor have opted to act. Instead, the administration has filed a judicial action. The administration should take this as a wake-up call, a bold reminder of the federal government's duty to protect each and every American from being the victim of crimes that can so easily be prevented. The federal government should be working with states to ensure the safety of all Americans. This is not a time for partisan politics. This is a time for robust, coordinated effort to guarantee the security of our citizens and to protect our nation's borders. Again, I thank the gentleman from Alabama for yielding, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Madam Speaker, I next recognize the gentlelady from Tennessee, Congresswoman Diane Black.
Thank the gentleman from Alabama for yielding. Madam Speaker, the tragic death of Tad Madel that took place in Huntsville, Alabama on April the 17th, 2009 serves as a sad reminder of the broken immigration system that we have here in the United States. We see stories like this in our local newspapers, on our local and national news. They are reminders that we have a serious illegal immigration problem in our country and the need to take action to secure our borders. As a member of the Immigration Reform Caucus, I believe that while we are a nation of immigrants, we are first and foremost a nation of laws. I'm a co-sponsor of a number of comprehensive bills that would help combat illegal immigration. One bill, the CLEAR Act, would authorize state and local law enforcement to assist in the enforcement of the U.S. immigration laws, which means that they can investigate, apprehend, and transfer over to ICE officials illegal aliens in the United States. Another bill that I'm co-sponsoring goes after sanctuary cities, denying state criminal alien assistance program funding for any state or local government that has in place any law, policy, or procedure that breaks federal immigration law. The SAVE Act is another great bill. The SAVE Act would increase Border Patrol and investigative personnel, encourage recruitment of former military personnel and use of Department of Defense equipment, and calls on the administration to develop a national strategy to secure our borders. And finally, directs authorities to check against terrorist watch lists those persons suspected of alien smuggling and smuggled individuals. Defense of our country and securing our borders is one of the primary responsibilities of government, and I believe that those who enter this country illegally are not only breaking the law, but risking the very security of this country. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Madam Speaker, I next recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Congressman Rob Woodall.
I appreciate my friend from Alabama for yielding, and candidly, I can't say it much better than my freshman colleague from Tennessee just did. We are a nation of immigrants, and we are a nation of laws. And my question is, when did it become so clear to everyone else that those things were in conflict with one another? Because when I look at it, it's not in conflict at all. In fact, it's in concert with one another. It was hard to listen to the story that my friend from Alabama was telling, because it's not a story that you only hear once. It's a story that you hear heartbroken families tell over and over and over again. And it's a family in Alabama, and it's a family in Georgia, and it's a mom in South Carolina, and it's a grandmother from Indiana, and on and on and on. And what I want to know is, who is it who's coming to defend that story tonight? Because I hear it in town hall meetings all the time, and I know my friend from Alabama hears the same thing. Rob, I want you to go up there, and I want you to fight for what's right, and I don't want you to compromise. Well, I don't want to compromise on principle. There's absolutely no principle I have that I'm interested in compromising on. But what I tell folks back home is there's common ground. There's common ground where no matter where you sit on the political spectrum, you can see your way clear to this path forward. And what I want to know from my colleagues, and I wish there were more of them in the chamber tonight, and again, I'm grateful to my friend from Alabama for putting this hour together, but where are the folks who oppose enforcing the laws? Where are the folks who believe that legal immigration is what we don't want and illegal immigration is what we do want? Where are the folks who believe that when criminals commit crimes, they're not supposed to be prosecuted? Where are those folks defending that? Because what I see in my part of the world, and I'm there in the northeastern suburbs of Atlanta, what I see in my part of the world are people who are proud of our history as an immigrant nation and proud of our future as an immigrant nation. I tell folks all the time, I don't worry that people want to come to America. I worry about the one day people don't want to come to America. What happens when they want to take their big brain and their hard work ethic and their entrepreneurial ideas and take it to China or take it to India or take it to Brazil? I worry about that. And we have so many challenges, as my friend from Alabama knows, in terms of restructuring our legal immigration process. I am heartbroken that we spend even a moment arguing amongst ourselves about the necessity of shutting down illegal immigration now. Not tomorrow, not a week from tomorrow, not after the next election cycle, today. Of the few things that the United States Constitution empowers the federal government to do, requires that the federal government do, enforcing our border security is one. And we don't do that well. We have so many conversations down here, as the Speaker knows, about all the things the federal government should stick its nose into, as if we're going to do those well. What about the one the Constitution requires us to do, which is secure our borders? You know, for me, the untalked about victim in the illegal immigration debate is the legal immigrant. Have you ever been to a naturalization ceremony? Do you have any friends who've been naturalized, who have earned the right to be a United States citizen? Wow. Wow. It's tears, but it's tears of joy. I wish we were teaching the same thing to our young people in schools that we're teaching to our immigrants in their citizenship classes, who are developing this deep and abiding respect for the rule of law and the American way of life. And the victim, when we turn a blind eye to illegal immigration, is the legal immigrant who does it all right. Because they're the victim of the animus that comes out of this debate. They're a victim of the sadness. In fact, I will tell you, the angriest people, again, I come from the Deep South. A lot of folks have a lot of stereotypes about how it is in the Deep South. But I will tell you, the angriest people in my part of the world about illegal immigration are not the ninth-generation white guy. It's the legal immigrant. Somebody stopped me the other day. They said, Rob, if you ever pass an amnesty bill, which we never will do, just to be clear, never ever going to happen, not while I'm here in Congress, give me my money back. You can't give me my life back. You can't give me back all the years and years and years I worked and I waited on the list and I waited patiently in my home country until my number came up. You can't give me that back. But I want my money back because it wasn't cheap. It's not. Being a United States citizen is advanced citizenship. It requires great commitments, as it is a great opportunity. And we treat it in this country as if it's a nothing. As my friend from Alabama knows, there's another bill out introduced by my friend from Iowa, Mr. King, called the Birthright Citizenship Act. I'm a co-sponsor of that act, that goes back to the 14th Amendment. Goes back to that time in this country where we were struggling with our national identity, and says those born in the United States under the jurisdiction thereof shall be United States citizens. Under the jurisdiction thereof. As you tell the story I say to my friend from Alabama, of someone who's been convicted of crime after crime after crime, of someone who has warrants out for their arrest across the United States, of someone who hasn't yet found a single American law that they have chosen to obey, I tell you that person is not under the jurisdiction of the United States. And births that are associated with that person do not give rise to citizenship in the United States. But the courts have said Congress just won't decide on this. Congress won't take a stand on this. Well, Steve King of Iowa said, yes, we will. And I was proud to join him on that, to define what is the greatest gift we have in this country, and that's the gift of American citizenship. I was born with it, and I'm grateful for it every day of the week, but we treat it like it's nothing. And I will say to folks who think that it's nothing, go to one of these naturalization ceremonies. Talk to your friends and neighbors who have worked for it and earned it, and they will tell you that it's something. And in the Army that we're developing across America, to come and stand strong on the issue of illegal immigration, the Army that's forming across America to say we are proud that we're a nation of immigrants, but we're even more proud that we're a nation of laws, that Army is composed of legal immigrants of every stripe, from coast to coast, from north to south. And it makes me so proud, because I think that's what America is all about. I want to go back and say to the gentleman from Alabama, thank you for introducing the American Jobs Act. For folks who look those things up on TV, it's H.R. 2670, I believe. Is that correct? Again, where are those folks? We're not talking about compromising our principles. We're talking about pursuing those things that are common ground. In this era of 10% unemployment, who are those folks who think that hardworking, tax-paying American citizens don't deserve that job first if they're willing to work for it? Who is that? I'm sure that there's been an editorial or two in your local newspapers that if your newspapers are anything like mine, that have not reacted all that kindly to your decision to stand up and do what is right. But doing what's right is not always easy, and it's rarely appreciated in its time. It's often appreciated as history writes it. But who is it who believes that folks who have paid their taxes for a decade, who've been laid off in the middle part of their life, who can't afford to send their kids to college, who can't afford to buy medicine for their wife, who are those people who believe that those folks don't deserve first crack at that job? First crack. We have a legal immigration process in place in this country that will allow you to come here the right way, get a green card the right way, and apply for jobs just like everybody else. Folks, do it. Do it, and I welcome you. But in this era of unemployment, who are those folks who defend this practice of illegal labor? And I will tell you, it's not just the folks who go to work. It's the folks who employ those folks who go to work. This is not about illegal immigrants alone. This is about those businesses that hire those illegal immigrants. A crime is a crime here in this country. They're not all the heartbreaking crimes that my friend from Alabama has described, but they are crimes that have consequences. These are not victimless crimes. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. The victim could be that American who can't find a job to support his kids and his family. The victim could be that school district that can't afford to sort out how those classes are going to go, that can't afford all the teachers, but has an increasing workload because of the children associated with illegal immigration today. The victim could be that health care system that can't treat folks as they'd like to treat them, doesn't have enough money to deal with the community as it is, and the burden keeps growing and growing and growing. It is not a victimless crime. And in terms of finding common ground, I looked at my friend Rob Bishop's bill. Rob Bishop's from Utah, and he's introduced H.R. 1505, the National Security and Federal Lands Act. Now, the preposterous things that we discuss here in Washington, D.C., this is one. Look it up for yourself. H.R. 1505, what it does is it changes the law, so that Border Patrol agents can access areas of the border. Hear that. There is a bill in this Congress to change the law so that Border Patrol agents can get access to the border. 4.3 million acres of border designated wilderness along our southern border. And in those areas, the Border Patrol can't use motorized vehicles, can't construct roads, can't even install security and communication apparatus. Hear that. Hear that. The law of the land in America today is that the Border Patrol agents cannot patrol the borders. H.R. 1505 will change that, and I hope we'll pass that here. And I want to say finally to my friend from Alabama, you know, you and I are both new here. I've only been here 9 months, and I'm learning something every day here. I was more than a little bit surprised when the administration came out and said, no, it's really not whether or not you're illegal. It's whether or not you're illegal and when we just make our decisions about whether or not to deport you. But what I learned in that conversation is that we have a backlog of deportations in this country. When we talk about funding priorities in this country, for the last 9 months, I've been focusing on funding the Border Patrol. I thought what we needed were more boots on the ground, and I still believe we do. But what I have learned from the administration is we also need more bottoms in the seats in immigration courtrooms across this country. We may need more immigration judges. If we don't have enough people to process all the deportations that are in line, what we need is not to stop the deportations. What we need is to hire more people to process those deportations. And I tell you, I'm a small government conservative. You're not going to find many government programs that I want to come down here and spend money on. But again, the Constitution has given to you and me the responsibility of enforcing this part of the law, has given us the responsibility of securing our borders. And if what it takes to be successful is spending more money to hire more immigration court judges, to fill more buses, to comply with more of the law that is in fact the law of the land, then I'm prepared to do that. And I appreciate the administration, again, for educating me in that way, because I had no idea that we were so successful at identifying folks, and we just weren't successful at finishing that deportation process. So I say to my friend from Alabama, again, I so much appreciate his leadership on this issue. I am a proud supporter of the Jobs for Americans Act. I look forward to bipartisan support on that act because, again, we're not talking about asking anyone to compromise their principles. We're asking people to celebrate that we are an immigrant nation and that we are a nation of laws. And I tell you, I don't want to live in a nation that is willing to give up on either one of those, and we don't have to. I thank my friend.
Madam Speaker, I want to express my thanks for the eloquence of Congressman Rob Woodall of Georgia, Diane Black of Tennessee, and Robert Aderholt of the state of Alabama. I pray that the American people in Washington, D.C. will be mindful of the loss of Tad Mattel, the suffering of his family, and the sufferings of hundreds, if not thousands, of other Americans under similar yet difficult circumstances, all brought about because our federal government is derelict in its duty to protect American citizens from the conduct of illegal aliens. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield the remainder of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to discuss employment or lack of employment here in the United States. We just listened to a discussion about the problem, and certainly immigration is a piece of the problem. But in the whole totality of the extraordinary unemployment in the United States, it is but one piece. The solutions to the crisis that faces America and Americans is way beyond just the immigration policy. I would hope that my colleagues from the Republican side would work towards a comprehensive immigration reform program, one that certainly will deal with the border and security on the border, although I think much of what was said earlier is overblown, and dealing with deportations. I would point out that the current Obama administration has deported more people in the last year than in the entire 8 years of the Bush administration. Much needs to be done. A comprehensive immigration policy needs to be put in place. But if it were in place today, the unemployment in this nation would not be solved by that alone. There is a solution that's at hand. There's an opportunity for this Congress to act immediately to bring back American jobs, to put Americans back to work. It's the American Jobs Act. A week ago, a little more than a week ago now, the President stood before a joint session of Congress here in this chamber, filled with Democrats, Republicans, senators, and members of Congress, and he presented to us a comprehensive program to put Americans back to work. I want to discuss that tonight and also pick up the issue that he raised yesterday about how we do that, how we put Americans back to work, and in the next several years bring the deficit under control and put America's financing back in shape. So it's the American Jobs Act, a very comprehensive proposal, a very bold proposal, and one that would actually, not by his estimate, but by the estimate of independent economists, employ some 1.5 to 2 million Americans immediately. And I'd like to tell you how that might come about if this House were to pass the legislation. We know that for America to succeed both in the short term and the long term, it's not only about going back to work, it's also about critical investments. Over the weekend, back in my district in California, the East Bay area of San Francisco Bay and up into the Central Valley, I had the opportunity to talk to teachers. Teachers who were very concerned that given the financial situation in California, that they were going to be laid off. And generally it's the young teacher that has only been there a little while that's given the pink slip and sent on down the road. This is a personal issue in my family. My daughter and son-in-law are teachers, and their class size has already grown from 2021 to 34, 35 in the second grade class. A very difficult teaching situation. Yet more layoffs are likely to occur. So one of the fundamental investments that needs to be made in any society that wants to grow, that wants to prosper, that wants to have social justice is the education of the young. And in the case of the United States, with the extraordinary number of unemployed, some 12 to 14 million, and underemployed, perhaps another 10 million, it's the re-education of those that have already been in the workforce. So a key investment is education. Now, in the American Jobs Act, the President has proposed a very strong, vibrant, and necessary program to keep teachers in the classroom and to bring teachers back into the classroom. He's proposed that we fund 280,000 teaching positions across this nation. Now, that's a huge number of teachers, many of whom have already been laid off and did not arrive for this fall school year. We can put them back into a classroom as soon as this Congress and the Senate passes the American Jobs Act. It's about $35 billion to do this. Is it money well spent? Well, if you want to consider investments in the most critical of all the things that a nation does, It's the education of their children. This is an enormously important factor in building the future of America and simultaneously putting people back to work. When these teachers go back to work, that cycles money into the community. And so the grocery store, the arts store, programs that require books and pamphlets and so forth, all of those things will begin to be circulating in our community. So this is one of the key programs that the President has proposed, the American Jobs Act, fixing our schools, putting teachers back to work. And that is a critical, critical investment. If I might just put up another way of describing this. If you really care about America, you want to have a better America, then we simply have to invest in America. And there are numerous ways we can do it. We talked about the education programs, and that's certainly one. This is another one here that relates to the education. I don't know if you can see this, but that's a young technician in a laboratory, perhaps in a hospital, or quite possibly in a program, a new business that I saw in Davis, California. It's a biotechnology firm that actually produces herbicides and pesticides that are taken out and, well, first discovered in the environment. These may be bugs, these are fungus, these are bacteria that exist naturally in our environment that in one way or another kill bugs or kill unwanted plants. And so they're discovering these. They are then understanding the chemical, the biological nature of it, and then producing, mass producing these biological pesticides and herbicides. Two things they need. They will eventually go out with an IPO, so they'll need capital, and that's another piece of what the President is proposing. But they also need technicians in the laboratory. In going through this particular lab, the owner of it said, I said, how's your employment? Well, we're at 90 employees now. We're 3 years old, and we need to grow, but I can't find the technicians. In the President's program, there is a specific re-education program that's available for young men and older men and women that want to learn a new technology, a new trade, and that's the technicians here, so that they can fill those 4 immediate openings that exist in Davis, California for lab technicians. Similarly, the community colleges will be able to receive the Pell Grants and the grants and loans for the first time ever to provide money so that these people can go to work. There's yet one other program, and we'll get to the construction here in a little while as we go through this. Let me just take a break here for a moment and yield to my colleague.
I appreciate my friend from California.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Madam Speaker, I send to the desk 2 privileged reports from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule. I only have one. You're going to love it. It's going to be a good one.
The clerk will report the titles.
Report to accompany House Resolution 405, resolution providing for consideration of the Senate amendment to the bill H.R. 2608 to provide for an additional temporary extension of programs under the Small Business Act and the Small Business Investment Act of 1958 and for other purposes. Report to accompany House Resolution 406, resolution providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 2401 to require analyses of the cumulative and incremental impacts of certain rules and actions of the Environmental Protection Agency and for other purposes.
Referred to the House calendar and ordered printed.
Thank you. I thank my friend.
The gentleman from California may proceed.
Thank you very much. It's always a privilege to yield to the Rules Committee and the good work that they do. Let me continue on here for a moment. I want to pick up the last issue that I talked about, which was lab technicians retraining men and women. One of the key aspects of the President's Jobs Program is the fact that we have about 4 million men and women who have served in the Iraq and Afghanistan theaters. Many of those are still there, but most have come home. When they leave the military, they have one of the highest unemployment rates of any group in the United States. This is simply wrong. These are men and women that have served this nation heroically and in considerable danger, and in many, many cases having suffered grievous injuries. We need to pay special attention to them and recognize that they have acquired some very, very important skills. They know how to work. They know how to show up on time. They know how to take instructions. What they don't know is how to be a lab technician. And they don't know that there are job opportunities out there. So the President has proposed a special program to encourage American employers, for example, the biotech firm that I discussed earlier, to reach out to veterans. There is a $5,600 tax credit. This is not a deduction. This is right off the bottom line taxes. $5,600 for any company that has less than $50 million of payroll to hire a veteran returning from the wars. Incredibly important and the right thing for America to do. The other thing, and this is even, I think, more well, just as important and perhaps more important. This $9,600 tax credit, again, this is a reduction in an employer's taxes of $9,600 for each wounded veteran, disabled veteran that has returned from the wars. And we only need to look at the photos that are too often in our newspapers about post-traumatic stress syndrome, about the men and women that have suffered grievous injuries of one sort or another. But if an employer is willing to reach out, they will be able to receive a $9,600 tax credit for those wounded warriors. These are America's heroes. These are the men and women that should be first in our thoughts and first in line. This can be combined with the educational programs that I discussed earlier, so that as the veterans come back, they have the opportunity to learn a new skill, perhaps a lab technician, and carry on and work through with a good career ahead of them that has enormous upside potential. Once you're in these high-tech businesses and the laboratory is there, the opportunity to go on, get additional education and additional pay and benefits is clearly before you. So this is one of the other aspects of the American Jobs Act, good for employers. They need an employee. They can deduct off their taxes $5,600 by hiring a veteran or $9,600 for hiring a disabled veteran. Very good, very, very solid program in the American Jobs Act. It doesn't stop there. Let me bring up one other item that I think we should really be focusing on. Where did it go? Here it is. I said earlier I'd come back to this issue of the construction worker over here. The unemployment in construction is probably well over 30%. In some parts, I know this is in California, it's in the range of 50%. So the men and women that are in the construction industry have suffered enormous unemployment, in part because of the housing market, in part because of the cutback in state and local government expenditures. But in the President's American Jobs Act, there is a critical investment for this nation, and that is the investment in the infrastructure. A big word, most of us now know it, but infrastructure are roads, airports, water systems, sanitation systems, and even the modern communication systems of not telecommuting, but various kinds of microwave systems and other fiber optic systems. All of those are modern infrastructures. Now, across America, we have allowed our infrastructure to deteriorate. Our bridges are in bad shape. More than 60% of the bridges in America need to be repaired and made stronger. There are earthquake standards that are not met. Virginia wasn't thinking too much about those until about a month ago, and then suddenly Virginia began to think about earthquake standards, and I will tell you that in this building, This Capitol was built a century or more ago, and they weren't thinking about earthquakes at that time. But all across this nation, the infrastructure needs to be modernized, needs to be brought back up to speed. And so the President has proposed a $50 billion sum of money immediately available for the infrastructure of the nation: bridges, roads, airports, the infrastructure of the modern communication systems. All of that is immediately available, and in addition to that, a very innovative and I think a very important idea called an infrastructure bank. Now, infrastructure bank has been talked about for a long time. Europe has had one for more than 2 decades. And what it is an initial investment by the government and then additional investment by public pension funds, by individuals, and that infrastructure bank operates just as a commercial bank does. Not a bunch of pork barrel projects by me or any of my colleagues here, but rather projects that are brought that are cash flow. They are able to repay the loans, repay the loan guarantees, and perhaps, depending upon the structure of the proposal, a grant of some sort. Now, that could turn into another $50 billion very, very quickly. I know that out in California, CalPERS, the big public pension fund, has already said they're going to commit $800 million to infrastructure in the state of California. With an infrastructure bank in place, such as the President has proposed, they may put in $2, $3, $4 billion. They certainly have the money. Now, in this House, my colleague from Connecticut, Rosa DeLauro, has pushed the infrastructure bank for several years, gotten no traction from our Republican friends, but at the same time, several Republicans have signed on that infrastructure bill. So we have a bipartisan and a bicameral. The Senate has a similar bill on that side. This is something we can do immediately. This is not new science. This is not a new program. It's a program that's been around a long time, not yet in law, but has been fully vetted, and it can happen very quickly as soon as the American Jobs Act is passed. If that happens, we'll be looking at least $50 billion for infrastructure projects, and quite possibly much more than that if the infrastructure bank comes along. Let me take up one other aspect of this program. And I think I'll take it up later, and I'll just tell you what it is. There is not a community in America that has all of their public schools as neat, as well painted, and as well conditioned as a community would want. In fact, many of our communities, our schools are an embarrassment. They're run down, the paint is chipping off the walls, the playgrounds are in disarray, the toilets don't work, the lab is a 1950 laboratory, there are no internet communications within the school. The President has proposed about a $25 to $30 billion program to renovate America's schools, to take those schools that are run down, whether they are in rural areas or in urban areas, schools that are run down, schools that are in need of rehabilitation, remodeling, and upgrading, would be in line. And it's calculated that there are 35,000 schools that could benefit from this program. Now, who's going to do the work? These are new jobs. These are new job opportunities. And much of this work is not of a very high skill, but rather a skill that can be met by many of the unemployed. So this is cleanup, it's painting, it's the other kinds of work that may not require the highest of skill levels. But that is one of the additional programs that's available, and a key infrastructure program. So as we go through these various elements that the President has proposed in the American Jobs Act, we will find the opportunity to put Americans back to work. I notice that my colleague from New York has joined us, and we'll begin once again the East Coast, West Coast. Earlier on, I've talked about the education program. I talked about the veterans programs that the President has proposed and gotten into the infrastructure. We have yet to hit the unemployment in some other areas, but take us wherever you want. Congressman Paul Tonko from the state of New York, the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution.
There
we
you
haven't
go.
talked about Making it in America yet, which is one of your favorite themes. So please, Mr. Tonko,
Absolutely.
share with us your thoughts.
Well, Representative Garamendi, thank you. Thank you for leading us again in another very thoughtful hour of discussion about the importance of deciphering the facts out there that will springboard the comeback, the economic recovery of this nation. And it must be done with the deepest and most profound sense of academics. And the American public is counting on Congress, working with the President, to make jobs more abundant in our society. You know, you talk about skills and the development of skills. Recently, during our district work period, traveled to Schoharie County in my district and saw the benefits of the investment of automation in manufacturing. And I was reminded by Wynn Kintz of Kintz Plastics that it's important for us to develop the skills that are required today in manufacturing. Now, he's involved with a CAT Center, a Center for Advanced Technology in the Capital Region. Works with RPI and other institutions, works with the private sector community in that compact that really puts together the vision and the need, expresses the need for manufacturing. Now, there are those who would suggest that manufacturing is dead. We've seen our heyday, it's over, it's history. Well, when you talk to America's manufacturers, they will tell you that they need to develop the human infrastructure, they need today's skills to meet today's competition. They will tell you about doing it smarter so as to be that sharpest competitor on the global scene. And they will talk about innovation. And just how does innovation happen? Well, it's taking ideas and moving them along, investing in R&D, building a prototype, developing that impact in manufacturing and making certain that we are at the cutting edge, that we're investing with America's brain power, its know-how, pulling together the intellectual capacity and making it work. But when we introduce innovation, we need people with the skill set to run these automated mechanisms in the manufacturing line. And so it is absolutely essential. It's so vitally important to develop the skill set, the know-how, in order to put people to work and make us competitive. It's happening as we speak. Mr. Kintz advised me that across this country, from my end of the country to your end, Mr. Garamendi, Representative Garamendi, we need skilled labor of the newest kind. And I can tell you there are many people who have been displaced from the workforce through no fault of their own. Their job may have been shipped offshore. They have a high work ethic, they have tremendous skill, but now it needs to be honed into present-day application, training, retraining, enabling us to advance innovation, advance manufacturing. These are important aspects to the work that needs to be done. And in the Make It in America efforts, where we enable people to dream the American dream, where we cultivate that climate where you can tether to the American dream, we can introduce the sorts of policies that it takes to advance Make It in America. And the President has done that with his American Jobs Act. We, as Democrats in the House of Representatives, have made it our mantra over and over again, stating, make it in America. And that takes on tremendous meaning. It takes on a variation of meanings. You can make it in America, produce it in America. You can make it in America. You can survive and grow economically in America. There's all sorts of making it in America themes that are interpreted through that statement. And it does incorporate sound trade policy. It incorporates an investment through incentives that provide the tax initiatives that will enable people to be strong. It takes that energy core ingredient, gives us the opportunities to be innovative in the energy cost, which can shave tremendous amount of price off the final product. Labor, investing in the human infrastructure. Education from pre-K all the way to advanced degrees. We need to invest in education, higher education, and research. Without cultivating ideas, without inspiring that sort of genius that comes up with very clever concepts, we are nowhere as a society. And finally, the infrastructure, putting together the sorts of efforts that will enable us here at home to ship our products, to have the infrastructure not only of the ordinary traditional type, but to invest in broadband so that communications can be state-of-the-art, so that we invest in a grid system that enables us to reach through that arteries and veins of the network, the transmission and distribution networking, making certain it's state-of-the-art. We saw what happened, did we not, in August of '03, when a failure in Ohio put out the lights on Broadway in New York City and impacted my district in upstate New York for weeks upon weeks. These are the factors. These are the motivating disciplines within our efforts to enable us to boldly state it's a Make It in America initiative. We're going to make it happen. We're working really hard. We're proud of the efforts made by the White House. It's a plan. It's a vision, laser sharp in its focus on putting people back to work, restoring the dignity of work. We've talked about it, gathering around the table. The dinner table at home is so very valuable when we can talk about having people bring home that paycheck. People have been denied that opportunity in far too many homes. 14 million Americans unemployed. They ought not wait 14 months for Congress to work with this president to get something done. So I'm just happy to join you on the floor of the House of Representatives, and thank you for the leadership that you exert on this issue.
Well, and you also, Mr. Tonko, you've been here night after night with the same theme, the Make It in America theme. You went through these so very, very well. A trade policy that really positions America to once again be the manufacturer for the world. Tax policy, we've done a lot on tax policy already. Let me just mention two things. One, we did last year. Unfortunately, none of our Republican colleagues were with us on that, but at that time the Democrats had the majority. We eliminated about $12 billion of tax breaks that American corporations received. Our tax money was given to those American corporations for shipping jobs offshore. I go, what?
Mm-hmm.
You mean they got a subsidy for shipping jobs offshore? They did. We ended it. So those are the kind of tax policies we were talking about. Now, the President has proposed a continuation of another tax policy that we put in place last year, and he wants to continue it as part of the American Jobs Act, and that is to give a business the opportunity to expense in 1 year, the cost of capital equipment, so that it's not depreciated over 7 years. That's an enormous advantage for a business to make the capital investment. Now, there's one thing that I would add to that. The President said it, but it wasn't specific to this, and that is that that capital equipment, that lathe, that welding machine, that saw, whatever it happens to be, or the cultivator, the tractor that out in the farm areas, that be an American-made piece of equipment, that the equipment be made in America. Because once again, we're using our tax money to subsidize the capital equipment when I want my tax money to be used for American-made equipment. And in fact, guess what? I've got a piece of legislation. I got so excited. You'll have to forgive me. But I have a piece of legislation that does just that. It couples up with what the President's been talking about. He talks about American-made, that we buy American. Well, H.R. 631 says for those construction, for that infrastructure, airports, highway, high-speed rail, trains, etc., that they're made in America. This is opportunities for all parts of America, and it works. It works.
Let me share a perspective with you, Representative Garamendi, and I know we've talked about this, but we'll share it for the sake of those viewing the discussion here this evening on the House floor. My district has been severely impacted by the ravages of the waters of Irene, and then with a 1-2 punch, if you will, with the tropical storm Ali. Wreaked devastating damage upon the upstate New York area, certainly in Pennsylvania, and in Massachusetts, in Vermont, in Connecticut, to name a few. and then even into the southeast with the Carolinas. But if ever you wanted to see a snapshot of change from just hours worth, where people were disconnected from their neighborhood, farmers who had to pour milk into the waters, the ravaging waters, because they had no connection to the outside world, roads wiped away by the force of water, bridges discontinued, rail systems knocked out, rail stopped until they could reconstruct that rail line. That pointed out with such significant measure, in very bold terms, the value of infrastructure. This screeching halt to a regional economy came about through the forces of Mother Nature. And it just brought into clear vision for me just what this infrastructure debate is about and how folks can ignore the value of infrastructure on this House floor and want to do political games on an idea that really talks about shipping freight across this country, shipping the essential materials for our manufacturing lines across this country. Infrastructure is that major artery. It's the lifeblood flow into our communities that enables the economic comeback to truly be that noble, bold approach. Infrastructure, and to put together in the American Jobs Act an infrastructure bank bill that allows us to place $10 billion that will leverage, we believe, $100 billion that then enables all sorts of constructs to occur and puts together a working plan for America's skilled labor is a powerful expression of job creation, job retention. It's what really is the pulse of America. It is that heartbeat of activity through our roads and bridges and rail system and airports that really tells the true story.
Well, we can rebuild America, and we're certainly going to have to rebuild your part of America, you and your constituents in Upper New York and in Vermont were devastated by Hurricane Irene. Floods that had not been seen perhaps in the entire modern history of those areas. So that needs to be rebuilt, but you're quite correct about the rest of the nation. San Francisco Bay Bridge went down in the 1989 earthquake, the Loma Prieta earthquake, and devastated the economy of San Francisco. Freeways collapsed. So we know that we need to build to a higher standard, and we know we need to repair. These are American jobs that are readily available today, and when we couple it with American-produced cement and steel and equipment that's American-made, we will generate a new resurgence of America's manufacturing industry. It can be done. All we need is a vote of this House. All we need is a vote of on the President's American Jobs Act. It's all there. The Buy America, the Make It in America is there. The construction jobs are there. The education is there. 1.5 to 2 million Americans going back to work the day or shortly after the President signs that legislation. This is really an opportunity, and to sit here and to waste time, it just seems to me to be a tragedy. We need help in Vermont. We need help in New York. Well, your people do. They've been devastated. And yet that bill hasn't even passed this House to provide the money for it. We have to do it. It's up to us. This is our task.
And I think it highlights exactly the concern that many of us have in terms of the response to what has pretty much rendered some areas of our country to be acknowledged almost as a war-torn area, where craters have been created by the force of water, where roads are no longer in play, where businesses have been shut down, where homes have been lost totally to the waters, to the rivers that flow in their communities. And when you look at that devastation, you would think that the first thing we would do is respond in earnest, quickly, and with a depth of acknowledgement that appropriates resources to get things going again. Well, our farmers need assistance, and they're not getting it through the response here with the concurrent resolution. It's a trade almost that we're asked to make about offsets that we can find. These are people that are looking for their children's school clothes in the rubbles. They're searching for pictures of grandparents to have something to which to cling to in the aftermath of that devastation. They're wondering if they'll ever open their business again, and we're not responding fully. We're looking for ways to cut so as to slide dollars over. Well, are you going to cut that youngster who now has no home? Are you going to cut her education? Are you going to cut his health care? Are you going to disavow any need for public safety? These are the efforts that, these are the challenges that when America reviews the process, it gets cynical. And I understand the cynicism. There's a lot of concern about stepping up to the plate and showcasing for America what effective government is all about. This is what my district is looking for right now. And when they hear about this expression of offsets, I know people in the district, I've known them for years, they're like extended family after 3.5 decades of representing them at some level in government. And I know their philosophy may not be my political philosophy, but they're angered about the talks of offsets as they have to look for new homes. They have to look for shelter. They have to look for food, for clothing. They're angry to hear about this offset. They're angry to hear about the total disavowing of ag assistance when now they have to rebuild their fields, clear it of debris, recreate the watershed areas that they need. These are urgent measures, and they are not going to be tolerating any sort of political gamesmanship.
If I might just add, I was insurance commissioner in California twice in the early 90s and then again in 2000.